Tirico went on with London Papa, and he said that the Niners said that they had a 4th round grade on Brock, but they couldn't draft him. You couldn't draft a quarterback that high because they had just drafted Trey very high. And Greg goes, I did not know that. So it was news to Greg. It was one of those things I heard, and my reaction was, I think this is new information, but I'm not sure if it's new information. But I think it's new information. The Niners told Tirico they had a 4th round grade on Brock.
Do you think because it would have sent ripple effects if they would have pulled the trigger in the 4th round, taking a quarterback?
I mean, if you know he becomes this, you would take him, right? You don't know that, obviously.
No. But based on that draft day, they go, this would be pretty controversial.
It would be, especially when you consider yes, it would be. It would be controversial. I also think historically, good franchises don't give a fuck, and they just draft quarterbacks in the 4th round if they like the guy because you have a young quarterback. I think you could defend it, but
tough spot. I think with the unknown with Trey to kind of rattle his confidence a little bit. I do think it's fair to a 4th round pick. I think you can pull the trigger in the 6th and no one thinks much of it. You go, hey, he was the best quarterback. We need a backup quarterback. Jimmy's gone. Not that weird. I think the 4th.
They ended up drafting a starting offensive. They drafted Burford with that 4th round pick they had. So
who starts?
And they also
splits time.
They also yeah.
He no longer does.
No longer. They also knew correctly, right, that no one was taking him in the 5th, so they didn't have to take him in the 4th. But here.
You want to give my educated guess? The 49ers don't. Their offensive coordinator or head coach. So I would imagine Tirico and those guys meet with Kyle, Wilkes, and then some players. Right? They don't also meet with the Kubiak combination of the offensive coordinators, correct?
You usually do not. Now, you might go out to practice. For these shows, they're pretty big. Maybe they request. You generally, it's coordinators, head coach, and players. But maybe Kyle, because Kyle comes in, maybe they brought in Greasy as well.
Okay, so they're sitting there. My educated guess is gonna be Kyle's there, and they're talking, and he's known Mike. Mike's called how many games back in the day with his dad. I mean, I'm sure, have a very good relationship, right? Just know each other, feel comfortable.
Yep. Chris,
call Chris in there. Kind of they're just talking ball, Kyle's, and you're at the point now where you go, listen, we're not totally shocked. Don't act like we didn't see this coming. We didn't have a 2nd round grade on the guy, but we liked him a lot. We had a 4th. And in all my years here of drafting quarterbacks, he was one of the guys that we liked the most that we realistically could have gotten in the 6-7 years that I've been running drafts here. Greasy loved him. He convinced me. He showed me him. I fell in love. And as you guys see, the whole city and team loves him.
Slowick liked him. That was the other one. Well, one thing Tirico said, maybe they did talk to Greasy. They talked to John Lynch as well.
Greasy, it's not arguable. Greasy loved him.
Yeah, right. And one of the things he said was Greasy, and this part's not new information necessarily, but Greasy had called one of his games in college as well. So Greasy had seen him at Iowa State. I think he said Iowa State, Iowa. Greasy didn't call like little games. Greasy called big college football games. So
a couple years. His junior and senior year, that potentially is 2 top 25 teams, right? It could be 16 versus 21. That'd be a good matchup on TV in terms of the numbers next to the school names.
You've always, from your day scouting with the Eagles, like used to joke like, a player gets good, guys will want to go in and change the grade in the computer on them. But wasn't there a story about a guy who was like changing his old grades? But my point is, like, could you lie about this?
A lot of people do that.
Could you lie about this, right? Because people are like, oh, now you say that to make yourself look good. They already look good, right? I don't know that they really have much incentive other than, I think if you're saying it to Mike, I think you're probably not trying to make the point that you look good. I think you're making the point. My guess would be, since we're guessing here, that you tell him that to make the point, understanding that part of why people are slow to warm on Brock maybe is because he's a 7th round pick. And you're saying like, look, if we had drafted him in the 4th round, people would be quicker to accept that maybe he is this good. Well, we think he was a 4th round draft quality player. By the way, I was looking through old emails for something, and I found a MIDDLEKAUFF email from like 2000 and whatever year, 12. I emailed you like, hey, what do you think of Derek? And you're like, Got the skills. I'd put him right. It was like before the season. Like I got him early 3rd round.
Went in
Not
early
you
second.
were my anonymous scout.
Two things on Purdy. I think the
Radio
question would be
Fresno will remember that piece of news.
Two rough loss by the Dogs. They were never running. They were never around the table. Tough place. Wyoming might be actually pretty good.
They might be in the Fiesta.
Did the team, the 49ers draft board, have Brock Purdy in the 4th round? Or did Greasy and Kyle on their own boards, Kyle, obviously his board, what he has in his own head would ultimately be the only thing that mattered, because at any moment he could say, we're drafting that guy.
Yeah.
But if Greasy told Tirico, which I would imagine they definitely know each other, right? That it goes, hey, I had a 4th round grade on him, is a lot different than the franchise had a 4th round grade on him.
That's true.
And I also think this. The changing the draft grade, I think most franchises, I would venture to say every single franchise in 2023 now, at some date, either December 15th, January 7th, after the BCS games, it locks your grade in. Now, you can change a grade,
update,
but
it.
you have to put in a separate, basically write-up.
Right.
Of, hey, I had a 3rd round grade on the guy, and every system is different. Some have those 6.6 or whatever the hell those equate to, that it's easier just to talk about it to a random guy about, had a 3rd round grade on the guy after watching the BCS game, the All-Star game, and really getting to talk to him. I would feel very comfortable taking a guy like this somewhere between pick 30 and 40 instead of in the 70s. That's his value. And I think he's the type guy that only goes up. And that's part of the process, too, of, listen, we think this guy's a 3rd round grade, but you have to understand where he's going to go. And I think Brock's a good example. After his junior year, he was viewed as an incredible player. Had taken Iowa State to the best season in the program history. Became first team all Big 12, which is a quarterback conference, right? It's an offensive conference, so that's very impressive.
Made Dan Campbell an NFL candidate.
Not then Dan returned Campbell, Matt Campbell, and then returned to school and didn't have as good of a year, missing, from what I've been told, several offensive skill guys, and they basically just they tried to manipulate it because they didn't have the wide receivers, but they had some tight ends, so they were doing a lot of like 2 and 3 tight ends with Brock and Brees. But it was pretty clear that they were kind of a one-man band with the running back. They did not have the wide receivers who had just been drafted. So I think you look back, when you watch him play, his innate feel for the position is, this guy's just a pretty natural. Now, I don't know if he looked like that. Maybe Matt Campbell would say, hey, when he first got here, he improved dramatically from that freshman year to the end of his sophomore year. He became a really good player. I don't know exactly the growth.
Right.
But clearly the reps he had, I'd say one major difference, if we're just comparing him to Trey Lance, reps. High school player of the year. This isn't Texas, California, or Florida, but I would say Arizona high school football is pretty fruitful with a lot of big-time recruits, and he was player of the year, and he has that picture next to Patrick Peterson. That's not nothing.
No.
That's not nothing. And several-year starter in high school, 4-year starter in college, immediately gets to start as a rookie. I mean, we're going to look in a couple years, as long as he stays healthy. He's just, the amount of football the kid's going to have played by the time he's 25 is going to be a lot.
How about this offseason not healthy? He misses so much time this offseason. When he comes back, he can't practice every day. It wasn't that long ago he was skipping practices. Now, part of it was maintenance, but then there was he's supposed to be back, but why is he throwing less today? So he did not have the cliche is you take your biggest jump from year 1 to year 2. I don't know if anyone's actually done the study to find out if that's true. I actually, thinking about it, doubt that it's true. I think what's that?
That the biggest jumps year 1 to year 2?
Yeah, I just think about like all the things that I've done in my life for an extended period of time. For me, it's usually like year 3, year 4, where you really feel like you're kind of getting into the zone, which I guess is a different thing. But what I'm saying is Brock, for all his reps, didn't really get that many reps this offseason, and yet he's come back just as better than he was last year.
The difference is, as in your example, as a rookie, let's say I'm Aaron Banks, just pick some 2nd, 3rd round rookie. you are the moment your season ends, and if you're playing at a place like Notre Dame or Bama or Georgia or whatever, you're playing into January. And then if you're an underclassman, you don't have all-star games, but you immediately go train. If you're a senior, you are more than likely going to the East-West game or the Senior Bowl. Then within a couple weeks, you're going to the Combine. Then in a couple weeks, you got your pro day / flying to teams flying to you. You're not actually training. And then you get to practice. You're exhausted, but you got to start like rookie mini camp. You got to start learning the playbook. You don't really get to acclimate like you do if you are just Deebo Samuel. Hey, Deebo, you just need to focus on football, get in shape. What did he do off season? Just grinded, got ready for the OTAs, spends all summer, already knows the playbook. So I do think there is a level of comfort with knowing what you're going to be asked to do and getting all the time you need to spend on that without having to fly here, fly there, waste a bunch of time in transit. 99% of them, you're not going to go to those places. You're not going to need to learn what they're telling you to learn. Remember, a lot of these coaches say, hey, we give these guys a little playbook, see how much they can retain. Well, you don't go to half the places you go visit. Hell, you don't go to all the places you go visit besides maybe one. Sometimes you don't even visit the place that picks you. So I would imagine for Purdy, the mental reps of knowing clearly he's a mental guy, because think how prepared he was last year without having any on-the-field reps in the games before he got to play.
Yeah.
And I would imagine the amount of practice he got, in training camp and even those first couple weeks before the injury came and he became the backup quarterback was pretty small before Jimmy started, and then he became the scout team guy. I wonder what his role was at practice once kind of training camp ended till the middle of September. Was he just kind of standing there watching a lot while Trey was doing scout team stuff? And because he probably wasn't getting many reps, right? Or excuse me, he was getting reps and Jimmy was running the scout team. Because Trey was the starter, which is crazy to even think about.
You're saying Garoppolo was running the scout team?
I'm saying when they re-signed Jimmy to be the backup,
yeah,
and they cut what's his name, he was the third-string quarterback. But as Kyle said, our third-string quarterback doesn't really do anything.
Yeah, it was 4 throws.
So keeping Trey as their third-string quarterback, one, they never were going to do that, and two, he's like, I don't know how McCarthy does it, but here he'd just be looking at butterflies flying around. Which makes sense, because if I only got 2 reps for quarterbacks, you're going to want your backup quarterback, even if he's not running your offense, to be playing football. Right. And then he just treats his starting quarterback like the Colts used to with Peyton Manning and Tom Brady. You just get all the reps. Unlimited.
Yep.
Which seems to be working.